I always thought the hall mirror was ugly, until it showed me someone walking through my house who wasn't on the floor in front of it. That sounds like a line somebody would make up. I know that. If I heard it from someone else, I'd probably nod and say, yeah, that's creepy, and then I'd forget about it before dinner. But I still have the mirror. It's leaning against the wall in my garage now, wrapped in an old moving blanket with blue painter's tape around the edges. I keep meaning to take it to the dump. I've loaded it into the back of my truck twice. Both times I brought it back inside. Not because I want it, because part of me is worried that if I get rid of it, I'm getting rid of the only thing that caught what happened. The cameras caught some of it too. Not enough. Never enough. The mirror caught the rest. My name's Daniel. I'm 41. I live, or lived at the time, in a 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood outside Dayton. Nothing special, split-level entry, beige siding, 2-car garage, a little maple tree out front that dropped leaves into the gutters every October. My wife Mara worked early shifts at a dental office. I worked from home doing estimates for a flooring company. We had 2 kids, Owen, who was 12, and Lucy, who was 7. Most nights were boring in the exact way you hope your nights are boring when you have kids. Homework at the kitchen table, dishwasher running, shoes piled by the garage door, somebody asking where the iPad charger went. Our house had a sound I knew better than any alarm system. The back door had a little brass bell hanging from the knob. Not a security bell, a Christmas decoration Mara forgot to put away years ago. It made a soft double chime whenever the door opened. Ting-ting. That was the sound of the dog coming in when we still had him. That was the sound of Owen sneaking out to shoot baskets. That was the sound of me taking trash to the bin after dinner. After what happened, that sound got inside my head. The ugly hall mirror was mounted across from the stairs right by the coat closet. It had been there when we bought the house. Wide wooden frame, dark brown, too heavy for one person to move without swearing. Mara wanted it gone, but it was useful. You could check your coat, your hair, whether your kid had toothpaste on their shirt before school. It also reflected the kitchen doorway, the bottom of the stairs, and a thin slice of the back door if you stood in the right spot. I didn't think about that until later. The cameras were my idea. Nothing fancy. 2 indoor cameras, one over the garage entry pointed at the kitchen, one upstairs in the hall facing the kids' rooms, one doorbell camera out front. I put them in after someone stole packages off 3 porches on our street. Mara hated the indoor cameras at first. She said, "I don't want to live in a gas station." I told her they only recorded motion when we armed them at night or when we left. We made a rule that the upstairs one would face the hallway only, not into any rooms. After a while, everybody forgot they were there. That was the problem. Maybe. We forgot a lot of things we're watching. The first clip was from 2:13 in the morning on a Tuesday. I remember the time because I woke up at 2:19 to pee, checked my phone like an idiot, and saw a motion alert from the kitchen camera. Usually it was nothing, a moth. Headlights through the blinds. Sometimes the camera decided the refrigerator light turning off was a person. I opened the app because I was awake anyway. The clip showed our kitchen in black and white. The island, the sink, the garage door on the right, the hallway mirror in the background. For 3 seconds, nothing moved. Then in the mirror, a person crossed from the stairs toward the kitchen. Just a shape, adult height, dark shirt, bare feet. I watched the clip again. On the actual kitchen floor in the camera view, nobody crossed. The mirror showed someone passing through the hallway, but the hallway itself, the little part visible beside the fridge, stayed empty. I sat up in bed so fast. Mara stirred beside me. She mumbled, "What?" I said. "Nothing. Camera thing." I watched it 6 more times with the brightness all the way up. It looked like me. That was my first thought, and I hated that it was my first thought. Same height, same shoulders, same way of walking with the left foot. Turned out a little from an old ankle injury. I got out of bed and checked the house. I didn't turn on many lights. I didn't want to wake the kids. I walked down the stairs with my phone flashlight pointed at my feet. The hallway smelled like the lemon cleaner Mara used on Sundays. The back door was locked. The deadbolt was turned. The little brass bell hung still. I checked the garage. Nothing. The laundry room. Nothing. Living room. Nothing. When I passed the mirror on the way back upstairs, I didn't look at it straight on. I saw myself at the edge of it, pale and stupid in a t-shirt and boxers, and that was enough. In the morning, I showed Mara. She watched the clip while standing at the counter, buttering toast for Lucy. She said, "That's you." I was asleep. "Maybe you got up and don't remember." I woke up 6 minutes later. She shrugged, but not like she didn't care, more like she wanted it to be boring. Owen looked over her shoulder and said, "Dad, that's weird." Mara handed him his lunch bag and said, "It's a reflection glitch." I wanted that to be true, so that's what I called it for the rest of the day. A reflection glitch. 2 nights later, it happened again. This time the alert was at 3:02. I didn't wake up until morning, so I found it while drinking coffee. The kitchen camera showed the same view, black and white. Motion picked up near the hallway. In the mirror, someone stood at the bottom of the stairs, not crossing. Standing. Their head was turned toward the camera, but because it was a reflection, I couldn't see a face clearly, just a gray patch where a face should be. I scrubbed the video back and forth. The figure appeared 1 frame after the kitchen light flickered from the fridge cycling on. Then it stood there for 11 seconds. Then it stepped backward, out of the mirror's slice of hallway. Again, the actual hallway in the camera view was empty. I checked the upstairs camera next. At 3:01, 1 minute before the kitchen clip, it had recorded motion in the upstairs hall. The camera faced Lucy's door, Owen's door, and the bathroom between them. The clip showed nothing at first. Then Lucy's door opened about 3 inches. I could see the dark gap. A hand came out. Not Lucy's hand. Too big. It rested on the door frame, fingers spread, then pulled the door closed without a sound. I played it once, then again. Then I closed the app and put my phone face down. Mara was packing her lunch. She noticed my face. "What now?" I showed her. She didn't say glitch this time. She called Lucy down and asked if she'd gotten up. Lucy had cereal milk on her chin and 1 sock falling off. She said, "No." "You didn't open your door?" "No." "Did you have a bad dream?" Lucy shook her head and went back to picking marshmallows out of her cereal. Owen said, "Maybe I did it." But he said it too fast. I looked at him. "Did you?" "No. I mean maybe." "I don't know." Mara snapped, "Don't mess around." He went quiet. That afternoon I replaced the locks. Front, back, garage entry. I added a bar to the sliding door in the family room. I checked every basement window and found 1 latch loose, so I tightened it with a screwdriver until the screw head stripped. I also moved the kitchen camera. I put it higher on the cabinet and angled it so it caught more of the hallway directly, not just through the mirror. That felt smart at the time. At 1:46 that night, the back door bell rang. Ting ting. I woke up before the alert came through. It wasn't loud, but I knew that sound. My eyes opened and I held my breath. Mara whispered, "Was that downstairs?" I didn't answer because I was already getting out of bed. I grabbed the baseball bat from behind our closet door. It was Owen's old aluminum bat, too small for me, but it was what I had. At the top of the stairs, I listened. The house made normal house sounds, air through vents, a pipe ticking, refrigerator hum. Then the bell rang again, ting ting. Not the full sound of the door opening, more like someone touched it with a finger. I went down 1 step at a time at the landing. I could see the mirror. In it, the back door was open. Just a few inches. Cold air moved the curtain beside it. But when I turned my head and looked at the actual back door, it was closed. Locked, the curtain was still. I stood there with the bat raised and my mouth so dry my tongue stuck to my teeth. The mirror showed the door easing wider. In the real kitchen, nothing moved. I stepped down 1 more stair. The mirror showed a bare foot come through the door. Then another. A man stepped inside. He looked like me. Not exactly. That's important. He looked like me if I hadn't slept in a week. Same build, same hairline, same old gray t-shirt I wore to paint the basement the summer before. I was wearing that shirt right then. The man in the mirror looked down at the brass bell like he didn't want it to make noise. Then he looked up toward the stairs, toward me. I turned my head to look into the kitchen. Empty. When I looked back at the mirror, he was gone. I didn't tell Mara all of that at first. I told her I thought I heard the bell. I told her the doors were locked. I told her I was going to call the alarm company and maybe upgrade the system. She sat on the edge of the bed, arms crossed, watching me pace. "You are scaring me," she said. I am scared too. That was the first honest thing I'd said all morning. We checked the footage together. The kitchen camera, the one I had moved, caught the hallway directly now. At 1:46, it showed the back door closed. It showed the mirror. In the mirror, the door opened. Mara watched without blinking. The clip had no sound, but we both knew when the bell had rung. The man stepped in. He kept his head low. He moved like he belonged there. Then he vanished from the mirror. Mara whispered. That's not possible, I said. It's someone. Where is he then? I had no answer. We called the police that morning. I expected them to laugh. They didn't exactly, but they didn't know what to do with it either. An officer named Kelso walked through the house. He checked doors and windows. He looked at the clips on my phone and frowned. He said, could be image overlay. Could be the app messing up with old footage. It's wearing my shirt. He looked at me, then at my shirt. Do you have security footage from outside? The doorbell camera showed nothing. No one came to the back gate. No one crossed the driveway. No one walked past the side yard. Officer Kelso wrote a report for suspicious activity. He told us to keep the doors locked and call if we saw anyone in the house. It sounded reasonable. It sounded useless. That day, Mara took the kids to her sister's after school. She said it was just for dinner, but she packed overnight bags. I stayed home and did something I'm still embarrassed by. I walked through the house talking out loud. I said, I see you. I said, this is my house. I said, I called the police. My voice sounded thin in the rooms. Nothing answered before bed. I put small pieces of blue painter's tape on things. One on the back door, connecting the door to the frame. One on each kid's bedroom door. One across the pantry door. One on the basement door. I took pictures of all of them. Then I slept on the couch with the bat beside me, and every light off except the stove clock. At 3:18, I woke to the smell of peanut butter. Not strong, just enough. Lucy ate peanut butter on toast almost every morning. We kept the jar in the pantry, top shelf, beside the cereal. I opened my eyes and saw the pantry door standing open. The tape hung broken from the frame. I sat up slowly. The kitchen was dim, lit by the green numbers on the stove. 3:18, the peanut butter jar sat on the island. The lid was off. A butter knife lay beside it on the floor. In front of the hall mirror were two bare footprints in peanut butter. One right, one left. Then nothing. No trail leading away, no marks toward the stairs, just two prints facing the mirror. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and opened the camera app. There was a clip from 3:14. It showed me asleep on the couch. I know it was me because I was right there under the plaid blanket, mouth open, one hand hanging off the cushion. In the mirror, another me stood at the pantry. He took down the peanut butter, he opened it. He dipped 2 fingers in. Then he walked toward the sleeping shape on the couch. I couldn't see him in the room. Only in the mirror, he stopped beside me. He leaned down like he was going to whisper into my ear. The clip ended. I don't know what he said, but when I woke up, my left ear was wet. After that, Mara didn't argue about leaving. We stayed at her sister's for 3 nights. I checked the cameras every hour. Nothing moved. No alerts. No doors. No mirror clips. On the 4th day, I went back alone to grab mail and clothes. The house felt stale. Not abandoned. Just paused. The tape was still broken on the pantry. The peanut butter footprints had dried into dull smears because I had been too shaken to clean them. I stood there looking at them for a long time. They were my size. I checked the bedrooms. Nothing missing. I checked Mara's jewelry box. Nothing. Owen's game console. Still there. Laptop. Still on my desk. That bothered me more than theft would have. Who breaks into a house and eats peanut butter? Who stands over a man sleeping and leaves? I went to the hall mirror and looked at myself. I said, "What do you want?" My reflection said it too. Normal. Exact. I lifted my right hand. It lifted its left. I leaned closer. My eyes looked tired. My beard was uneven because I had stopped shaving. On the bottom left corner of the mirror, I noticed a small gray smudge. Peanut butter. A fingerprint. It was on the glass. I hadn't touched the mirror. I know that because the thought of touching it made my stomach fold. I took a picture. Then I wiped it with a paper towel and put the towel in a plastic bag like I was in some crime show. That night, at Mara's sister's, nobody slept well. The kids were on air mattresses in the den. Mara and I were in the guest room. Around 2:30, Owen came in and stood by the bed, he said. "Dad?" I sat up. "What?" he said. "I think I saw you in the hallway." Mara turned on the lamp. I asked him what he meant. He rubbed his eyes and said, I got up to pee and you were standing by Aunt Jen's front door. I was here. I know. He started to cry then, but quietly, like he was trying not to make it worse. Mara pulled him into the bed with us. I walked through the house with Jen's husband, Mark. We checked doors, closets, the garage. Nothing. No cameras there. No mirrors in the hallway either, except a little round one by the entry. I took it off the wall and put it face down on the table. Mark watched me do it and didn't say a word. The next morning, nobody remembered Owen coming into our room. That's not exactly right. Owen remembered being scared, but he didn't remember seeing me by the door. Mara remembered turning on the lamp, but not why. Mark remembered checking the garage, but thought it was because I heard a noise outside. I remembered all of it, and I had a text from Mark at 2:47 a.m. that said, "Nothing in garage." When I showed him, he stared at his own phone like it had insulted him. He said, "I don't remember sending that." We went home the next day because there was nowhere else to go that made sense. Hotels cost money. Mara's sister had her own kids. Also, part of me thought the house was the only place I could catch him. I bought more cameras, one for the living room, one for the basement, one aimed straight at the hall mirror. Mara said, "Daniel, take the mirror down," I said. "Then we won't see him." She looked at me like I had just admitted something ugly. I didn't blame her. That night, we put the kids in our room. All four of us slept upstairs. I set a chair under the bedroom doorknob like my dad used to do in motel rooms. I put the bat beside the bed. At 2:58, every camera sent a motion alert at once. My phone buzzed so hard on the nightstand it fell to the floor. I picked it up. The live feed from the mirror camera showed the hall mirror. For a second, I saw only darkness and the camera's little red dot reflected in the glass. Then I saw myself standing in the mirror. Not my reflection. I was upstairs, sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in my hand. In the mirror feed, the other me stood in the downstairs hall, facing the glass. He held something. Blue painter's tape. He pulled a strip from the roll with his teeth and pressed it over the mirror's surface. On my phone, the image went partly blue. Mara whispered, "What is it?" I couldn't speak. The bedroom doorknob moved. Not a lot, just a small turn to the left. The chair under it creaked. Lucy made a sound in her sleep. I stood and raised the bat. The doorknob turned again, harder this time. Mara pulled both kids against her. I said, "Who is it?" My voice cracked. The turning stopped. From the other side of the door, my own voice said, "It's me." Not a recording. Not a joke. My voice. Low, tired, like I sounded after a long day. Mara covered her mouth. I said, "Go away." The voice said, "I live here." The chair shoved inward half an inch. I hit the door with the bat. Hard. The sound cracked through the room. Owen woke up shouting. I hit the door again. Something on the other side stepped back. I heard bare feet on carpet. Then the stairs creaked. One step, two, three. I moved the chair and opened the door before Mara could stop me. The upstairs hall was empty. The bathroom nightlight glowed blue. The kids' doors were open. The air smelled like peanut butter. I ran to the stairs. At the bottom, in the hall mirror, I saw him walking toward the kitchen. In the real hallway below, I saw nothing. So I did the only thing that felt left. I ran downstairs and looked away from the mirror. I watched the empty kitchen, the empty hall, the closed back door. Then I stepped into the place where the mirror showed him standing. My shoulder hit something solid. A person. I didn't see him before I touched him, but I felt him. Warm, real, wearing cotton. He made a small, surprised noise, exactly the noise I make when I bump my hip on the counter. I swung the bat sideways and hit something. Arm, ribs, I don't know. He stumbled into the kitchen island. For 1 second he was there. Not in the mirror. In front of me. A man in my gray paint shirt, with my face, but wrong in small ways. His beard was shorter. His left eyebrow had a cut through it. I didn't have. His eyes didn't look wild. They looked offended. Like I had come into his house. He said, "You're not supposed to be awake." Then Mara screamed from upstairs. I looked up. Just for half a second. When I looked back, he was gone. The back doorbell rang once. Ting. Not twice. Just once. Police came again. This time there was more to show. Broken chair mark on the bedroom door. A dent in the kitchen island. A smear of blood on the edge of the counter, though not much. Enough to be real. Officer Kelso came back with another officer. He asked me if I'd hurt myself. I showed him my arms, my ribs. Nothing. He looked at the blood and then at my face. Mara told them what she heard through the door. Owen said he heard me downstairs while I was upstairs. Lucy said she smelled peanut butter. Then, while the officers were still there, Mara stopped talking. She frowned and looked at me. "What?" I said. She said, "Why are the police here?" I thought she was joking. I actually laughed once because my brain couldn't take it any other way. She looked embarrassed. Then angry. "I'm serious, Daniel. What happened?" Owen didn't remember the voice anymore. Lucy didn't remember sleeping in our room. Officer Kelso remembered the first report, but he did not remember watching the earlier clips on my phone. His partner asked if we had been drinking. I opened the app. The clips from that night were there but corrupted. Gray blocks. Frozen timestamps. Audio popping. All except one. The mirror camera had saved 12 seconds. It showed the hall mirror covered halfway with blue painter's tape. In the uncovered strip at the bottom, you could see bare feet walking past. 2 sets. One set moving toward the kitchen, one set following. The second set was mine. I know because I was holding the bat, and the bat tip dipped into frame. The first set stopped. The second set bumped into it. Then the clip froze. Officer Kelso watched it twice. He said, "That doesn't show a face." "No," I said. "It doesn't show anyone entering." "No." Mara stood behind me with her arms around herself. She whispered, "I don't remember him." I said, "I know." She said, "I don't remember the door. I know." She started crying then, and I hated that I was almost relieved. At least she believed she had forgotten. That counted for something. The officers left around 5:30 in the morning. They took a sample of the blood, or said they would. I never heard anything useful back. A week later, I called and asked. They told me the sample was too small and contaminated. That word bothered me. Contaminated, like the house had touched it first. We moved out 2 months later, not because we could afford it. We couldn't. We rented the house to a cousin of Mara's coworker for less than the mortgage and moved into a smaller place across town. Before we left, I took down every camera. I patched the holes. I painted over marks. I cleaned the peanut butter from the floor with hot water and dish soap. It took longer than it should have. The oil stayed in the grain. The hall mirror was last. I tried to unscrew it from the wall, but the bracket had been painted over so many times it wouldn't budge. I got a pry bar from the garage and worked it loose inch by inch. When it finally came free, something fell from behind it. A strip of blue painter's tape. Old, folded over on itself. On it, written in black marker, were 4 words. "I don't write like that." That's what I told myself first. The letters were too tight. The D was shaped wrong, but it was my marker. From my junk drawer, the tape said, "Don't let him stay." I sat on the hallway floor for a long time with the mirror leaning against my knee. Mara called from the truck asking if I was okay. I said, "Yeah, 1 minute." I almost showed her the tape. I didn't. I put it in my wallet instead. That was 3 years ago. The family renting the house never reported anything. At least not to us. They stayed 1 year and moved for a job in Columbus. The next renters stayed 6 months. I don't know why they left. I try not to ask questions that make people look at me too long. Every now and then I still check old backups from the cameras. I know that's not healthy. Mara says it keeps the house alive in my head. Maybe she's right. Most of the files are boring. Empty rooms, headlights, the kitchen at night, my kids walking through with cereal bowls, me taking out trash. But last winter, I found one clip I hadn't noticed before. It was from the afternoon before the first motion alert. Broad daylight. No one home except me. I was in my office on a work call. The kitchen camera recorded movement because the back door curtain shifted. In the mirror, I walked through the hall carrying a laundry basket. In the actual hallway, nothing moved. I watched it again and again, waiting for the part that would explain everything. Then I noticed the shirt. It wasn't the gray paint shirt, it was the blue button-down I wore to our closing, the day we bought the house. I hadn't worn it in years, it didn't even fit me anymore. The me in the mirror stopped by the coat closet and looked toward the stairs. Then he turned toward the glass. He raised one finger to his lips, like he was telling me to be quiet, or like I had already seen too much. I closed the file and went out to the garage. The mirror was still there, wrapped in the moving blanket. Dust on top, tape around the edges, one corner of the blanket had slipped down, just enough to show a thin strip of glass. I didn't look at my face. I looked at the floor in front of it. There, in the dust, were two bare footprints, one right, one left, facing out. I always thought the spare key under my brother's truck seat was harmless, until the truck came back without him and unlocked my kitchen door. That was the part I didn't tell people at first. I told them about the missing person report. I told them about the dash cam. I told them about the road on the video that no one could find on a map. But I didn't tell them about the key. I didn't tell them that 2 nights after the police released my brother's truck to me, somebody used that key at 2:11 in the morning while my wife and I were asleep upstairs. The lock turned once. The door opened 3 inches, and from the dark kitchen, I heard my brother's turn signal clicking. Tick, tick, tick. My brother's name was Ben. He was 38, 4 years older than me, and he drove a silver Toyota Tacoma with a cracked windshield and a dash cam stuck behind the rearview mirror. He bought the dash cam after a guy backed into him at a gas station and blamed him for it. Ben was careful like that. Receipts in envelopes, spare fuses in the glove box, a flashlight in every vehicle. His truck had one weird little problem. The left turn signal kept clicking after he canceled it. Not forever. Just 3 extra ticks. Tick, tick, tick. It used to make me laugh because Ben would tap the steering wheel and say, "Yeah, I heard you." After he disappeared, I heard that sound in places where no truck should have been. At the time, I lived with my wife Elise in a small house outside Springfield. Nothing remote. We had neighbors on both sides, a school at the end of the street, and a gas station bright enough to turn our bedroom blinds gray at night. Ben had a spare key to our back door because he helped me with house stuff, sump pump furnace filters, carrying furniture. He kept the key in a magnetic box under the driver's seat, which I told him was dumb, and he told me nobody steals from under the driver's seat. The night he vanished, he was coming over to help me hang a storm door. He called at 8:42 and said, "I am 10 out." I said, "Bring the bit set," he said. "Already in the truck." That was normal. That was the whole call. He never arrived. His phone went straight to voicemail at 9:06. By 10:30, I had driven the route between his place and mine twice. By midnight, Elise was sitting at our kitchen table with a notebook, writing down names and numbers because she needed something to do with her hands. The police took the report. They looked for the truck. They checked hospitals. They asked me if Ben drank, if he owed money, if he was depressed. He didn't. He wasn't. Not like that. 11 days later, they found his truck behind an empty furniture outlet 40 miles away. It was parked straight between 2 faded lines. No broken windows, no blood, no phone, no wallet. The keys were in the cup holder. The driver's door was unlocked. The dash cam was still mounted to the windshield. The detective let me pick up the truck after they processed it. He said they didn't have a crime scene, just an abandoned vehicle connected to a missing adult. I remember how angry that made me, because it sounded like Ben had misplaced himself. I drove the truck home from impound. The seat was set for him. The air smelled like dust and old coffee. A gas receipt from the night he vanished was tucked in the visor. The little dash cam made its startup chirp when I turned the key. I almost pulled it off the windshield right there. Instead, I drove home with both hands tight on the wheel. That night, I took the memory card out and put it into my laptop. Elise sat beside me at the kitchen table. Neither of us spoke much. The dishwasher was running. The back door was locked. I remember checking it twice. The first clips were ordinary. Ben leaving his apartment lot. Ben stopping at the gas station. Ben coughing once and turning down the radio. The windshield had a smear across the passenger side where the wiper didn't reach. At 8:42, the dashcam recorded his call to me through the truck speakers. I heard my own voice say, "Bring the bit set." Ben said, "Already in the truck." Then he laughed under his breath because the turn signal kept clicking. Tick, tick, tick. After that, he took the normal road toward my house. At 8:57, the camera showed Route 41. I knew that stretch. 2 lanes, soybean fields, a white church sign with missing letters. At 9:03, the video stuttered. Not a big glitch. Just one hard jump, like a missing second. When it settled, the road was different. The pavement was narrow and pale. No center line, no shoulder. The headlights showed low weeds on both sides, but they didn't look like any ditch I knew. They were flat and gray, like they had been covered in ash. Ben said, "No." That was all. One small word. Then the seatbelt chime started. I leaned closer to the laptop. The truck kept moving at about 35 miles an hour. The dashcam was forward-facing, but it caught the bottom edge of the rearview mirror. It should have shown part of Ben's forehead, maybe his eyes. It showed the empty headrest. Elise whispered, "Where is he?" I paused the video. My hands had gone dry. I rubbed my thumb against the side of the laptop until it hurt. I said, "Maybe he leaned down." I knew he hadn't. The truck drove for 46 minutes with no driver visible. The steering wheel wasn't in frame, but I could hear the tires change speed. I could hear the engine downshift. The truck slowed for curves, corrected itself, and kept going. The road on the video made no sense. It passed the same mailbox 5 times. A black rural mailbox with the number 19 on the side, sitting on a post that leaned left. Each time it passed, the road beyond it was different. Once there were telephone poles, but no wires. Once there was standing water on both sides of the road, black and still, reflecting headlights that weren't ours. Once the dashcam showed a line of white posts stretching into the dark, too close together to be a fence. Elise said, "Turn it off." I did. We sat there in the dishwasher noise. Then something clicked by the back door. Tick, tick, tick. Elise looked at me. I got up so fast the chair legs hit the floor. The kitchen was empty. The back door was locked. The porch light was on. The window over the sink showed only my face and the dark yard behind it. I told myself the sound came from the laptop. It hadn't. The next day I took the video to the detective. He watched some of it at his desk. He didn't watch all of it. I could tell by the way he kept his mouth still that he didn't like it, but he also didn't want to say anything that made it bigger. He said the timestamp could be wrong. I said the road isn't. He said the camera could have corrupted files. I said it was driving. He asked if Ben's truck had lane assist. It was a 12-year-old Tacoma with a cracked windshield. I said no. He made a copy of the card and told me not to post anything online. I promised I wouldn't, mostly because I didn't want strangers pausing my brothers last night and making jokes about it. For 2 days I didn't watch more. Then I woke at 2:11 to the back door opening. Not all the way. Just enough for the weather stripping to sigh. I sat up in bed. Elise was already awake. She had one hand on my arm. From downstairs came that sound. Tick, tick, tick. I went down with a hammer because it was the closest thing on my dresser. The kitchen smelled like rain, even though the forecast had been clear. The back door stood open 3 inches. The chain was still on, pulled tight. On the floor inside the door was a thin dusting of gray dirt, like road dust. The spare key lay in the middle of it. Ben's spare key. I changed the locks the next morning. I put a chair under the back doorknob at night. Then I put a rubber wedge under it too. Elise didn't tease me. She checked it herself before bed. That became our new routine. Front door, back door, chair, wedge. The truck stayed in our driveway because I didn't know what else to do with it. I disconnected the battery. I took the keys inside. I locked the doors. It still showed up on the dashcam footage. I know that sounds backward. The camera was in the truck, and the truck was outside my house. But the files on the memory card kept going past the night Ben vanished. Not by dates that made sense. The timestamp froze and jumped. Some clips were labeled with years that hadn't happened. Some had no date at all. In one clip, the truck drove through that same pale road for almost 2 hours. No driver, no radio. Just the engine, the tires, and the occasional slap of the wiper across dry glass. Then, without turning, the road became my street. I saw the school at the corner. I saw the gas station light. I saw my own trash cans at the curb. The truck pulled into my driveway and stopped with the headlights on the back door. The image sat there for 7 minutes. The windshield was dirty, but I could see enough. Our kitchen light came on. Then the back door opened. No one got out of the truck. No one walked into frame. The door just opened, the same 3 inches I had seen 2 nights before. The audio picked up a sound from inside the cab. Ben's voice, very low. He said, "Don't let it follow me in." Elise made me play it again. I didn't want to. She said, "Play it." So I did. The words were there, buried under engine hum, but there. Don't let it follow me in. That was when I stopped thinking of the truck as evidence and started thinking of it as a thing sitting outside our house. I called the police again. They sent an officer. He looked at the dust by the back door, the new locks, the chair, the wedge. He watched a few minutes of video and said he would add it to the file. I asked him if he thought someone had Ben's key. He looked at me and said, "Didn't you say the key was inside?" I had. That was the problem. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the kitchen with the hammer and watched the back door. Elise sat on the stairs wrapped in a blanket. Even though I told her to go upstairs, she said, "I am not leaving you down here with it." At 2:08, the porch light flickered. At 2:10, the laptop on the table woke from sleep by itself. The dashcam folder was open. A new file appeared at the bottom. I didn't touch the mouse. The file started playing. The view was from the truck, but it wasn't the driveway. It was the pale road again. The road with no line. The windshield was so dirty the headlights made halos around every speck. The truck moved slowly. On the audio, the turn signal clicked. Tick, tick, tick. Then the road became our street. I heard an engine outside. Elise stood up. The back door knob turned. The chair held. The wedge held the knob turned again, harder. On the laptop, the truck rolled up our driveway. In real life, headlights filled the kitchen window. I could see the truck through the glass. It was right where I had left it, except the headlights were on and exhaust curled from the tailpipe. I had disconnected the battery. I had done it myself. The back door pushed inward. The chain went tight. Something scratched around the new deadbolt. Not metal this time. A key. I looked down and saw the tip of Ben's spare key come through from the outside. Testing the lock, it no longer fit. Elise said, "Aaron, don't open it." I hadn't realized I was moving toward the door. On the laptop, the truck's camera showed the same door from outside, the same light, the same chair shadow through the glass. Then Ben appeared in the reflection on the windshield. Not outside the truck, not inside it, in the glass. He stood behind the camera, somehow small and bent by the curve of the windshield. His face was dirty. His mouth moved before the audio caught up. He said, "It learned the way." The kitchen door opened another inch. The chain screw started pulling out of the frame. I dropped the hammer and shoved my shoulder against the door. Something shoved back. It felt like weight. Not air, not a draft. A person leaning from the other side. Elise grabbed the chair and pushed with me. The turn signal clicked from outside. Tick, tick, tick. The pressure stopped. The key fell onto the kitchen floor. The headlights went out. The laptop screen went black. We stood there until almost dawn with our shoulders against the door. When the sun came up, the truck was cold. The battery cable was still disconnected. The hood was shut. There were no footprints in the driveway. The key on the kitchen floor was wet, not with water. It was coated in that same gray road dust packed into the teeth. We moved out a week later. I didn't sell the house right away. I couldn't explain why we were leaving without sounding like I needed sleep and a doctor. So we stayed with Elise's sister while I figured it out. The police kept Ben's case open. They searched more areas. They asked for camera footage from businesses near the furniture outlet. Nothing helped. Eventually, I had the truck towed to a salvage yard. The man at the yard asked if I wanted anything from inside. I took Ben's registration from the glove box. I took the dash cam. I left the rest. Before they hauled it away, I looked through the windshield one last time. The smear from the bad wiper was still there on the passenger side. In the dust on the glass, someone had drawn a small arrow. A left turn arrow. I didn't tell Elise about that. I put the dash cam in a box in our new garage. I taped the box shut. I wrote, "Ben," on it with a black marker and shoved it behind paint cans for a while. Things were quiet. Then, 3 months after the salvage yard crushed the truck, I found a new video file on my laptop. I hadn't plugged in the memory card. I hadn't opened the folder in weeks. The file was just sitting on the desktop, named with a string of numbers. I should have deleted it. I opened it. The video showed a road at night through a dirty windshield. No center line, no shoulder, pale weeds on both sides. The truck drove for a long time. Then the headlights found a mailbox, black, leaning left. Number 19. The camera passed it once. Then again. Then again. At the end, the truck slowed, and my new house came into view. Not my old house, my new one. The one Ben had never seen. The truck stopped at the curb. The picture froze with our front door centered in the windshield. I sat there with my hand on the laptop, listening to the tiny fan run. From the hallway, Elise called my name. I closed the laptop. I didn't answer her right away. I was looking at the little bowl by our front door where we kept our keys. In the bottom of it, under my house key and Elise's car key, was a pinch of gray dust. And pressed into it, clean and sharp, were 3 small marks. Tick, tick, tick. I used to trust the microwave clock because it was always 3 minutes fast, until every night it clicked to 2:17, and our front door started taking hits. Not knocking, not someone checking if we were home hits. The first one always landed low near the deadbolt. The second one hit higher, hard enough to make the little stained glass window rattle. Then came the scrape at the lock, like metal teeth dragging around the keyhole. I know how that sounds. I know it sounds like somebody should have been arrested after the first night. That's what I thought too. But the police came. Twice. Then a third time. They walked around with flashlights and checked the porch, the side yard, the alley behind the garage. They never found footprints, never found tool marks that made sense, never found anyone hiding. And still, every night, at exactly 2:17, the house remembered how to be broken into. The worst part wasn't that I heard them. The worst part was that, after a while, I knew what they were going to do next. My name is Aaron. I was 36 when this happened. My wife Kelly was pregnant with our first kid, and we had just bought the house because it was the only one we could afford that didn't need a total rebuild. It was a small brick ranch on the west side of town. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a narrow kitchen, and a basement that smelled like cardboard if it rained. The furnace was loud, the gutters sagged, the back fence leaned toward the neighbor's yard. But it was ours. That mattered to us. We had spent 7 years in apartments with thin walls. We wanted a nursery. We wanted a garage. We wanted to paint without asking permission. The front door was old and heavy. Dark wood, brass knob, brass deadbolt, male slot near the bottom. It had a chain lock too, the kind that looks useful until you really think about it. Kelly liked the door. She said it gave the house character. I didn't care either way until I realized the door had its own routine. Every night before bed I checked it. Deadbolt, chain, porch light. Then I checked the back door and the basement door. I had a habit of saying, "Locked up." Kelly would answer, "Good." That was our little routine. Nothing special. The microwave clock sat above the stove. It ran fast by 3 minutes, and I never fixed it. It annoyed Kelly, but it helped me get to work on time, so I left it alone. That clock became the thing I watched most, not the door, the clock. The first night was a Thursday. I remember because we had eaten frozen pizza, and the cardboard box was still on top of the trash when I went to bed. Kelly fell asleep early with one hand on her stomach. I stayed up scrolling on my phone until my eyes hurt. At some point I woke up. No dream, no thunder, just awake. The bedroom was dark except for the hallway light we left on because Kelly got up to pee 3 times a night. I could hear the furnace blowing through the vent. Then came the first hit, bang. I sat up so fast the sheet pulled off Kelly's legs. She woke up and whispered, "What was that?" The second hit came right after. Bang. The front door shook in its frame. I got out of bed in my socks and grabbed the only weapon I had nearby, a metal flashlight from my nightstand. Kelly said, "Aaron, don't," I said. "Call 911. My voice sounded calm, which was strange, because my hand was already wet around the flashlight. I stepped into the hall. From the living room I heard the lock scrape, not the knob turning, not the deadbolt clicking. A slow scrape, like someone was working a screwdriver around the metal. I turned on the living room light. The sound stopped. The front door was closed. Chain on deadbolt turned. Porch light on outside. I looked through the peephole. No one. I opened the door after the police dispatcher told Kelly to tell me not to, which was stupid. I know that now. But I was angry in that clean, useful way you get before fear catches up. The porch was empty. The steps were dry. The yard was still. Across the street, a blue television flickered in someone's upstairs window. The police arrived 12 minutes later. 2 officers checked everything. One of them walked a slow circle around the house. He said maybe someone ran off. He asked if we had enemies. I almost laughed. We were too tired for enemies. The second night, it happened again. The microwave clock clicked to 2:17. Bang. Kelly was already awake. So was I. We had both pretended to sleep for maybe an hour before that. Bang. Then the scrape. I had put a chair under the front doorknob before bed, one of our kitchen chairs. It had a yellow cushion with a stain from coffee. When the second hit landed, the chair jumped an inch across the floor. Not a slide, a jump. The legs made a short squeal on the wood. That squeal became another sound I couldn't get out of my head. I yelled, "Get away from my house." The scraping stopped. For maybe 5 seconds, there was nothing. Then a man's voice said, "Open it." It came from the other side of the door. Flat. Close. Like his mouth was near the mail slot. Kelly started crying behind me. She was standing in the hallway with one hand pressed to the wall. I said, "I called the police." The voice said, "Open it, Carol. My wife's name is Kelly. I didn't know any Carol." I kept the flashlight pointed at the door until the police came again. They found nobody. No one on the porch, no one in the bushes, no car idling nearby. The officer shined his light on the deadbolt and said he didn't see fresh damage. I showed him where the chair had moved. He looked at it and said, "Could have slipped." I wanted him to be right. The third night, I set up my phone on the bookshelf, aimed at the front door. At 2:17, the video caught the chair moving. It also caught the sound. Bang. Bang. Scrape. Then that same voice. "Open it, Carol." The screen showed the door. Nothing else. No shadow through the glass. No hand in the mail slot. No face at the peephole. But the chain pulled tight by itself. That was the part I kept watching. The chain lifted, stretched, and dropped. Like someone had tried the door from the other side. After a week, we stopped sleeping before 2:17. We started preparing for it. That's the part I don't like admitting. It became a chore. Brush teeth, check windows, put water by the bed, barricade the front door. I bought 2 rubber door wedges, a security bar, and a camera that recorded to a memory card. I replaced the screws in the strike plate with 3-inch screws. I watched videos about reinforcing doors until Kelly told me I was making it worse. She wasn't wrong. Every night I dragged the yellow cushioned chair from the kitchen to the living room and wedged it under the knob anyway. Locked up. Good. Then we waited. At first, the sound stayed at the front door. Same hits. Same scrape. Same voice. Then the routine grew. At 2:19, something crossed the porch from left to right. We heard the boards creak, even though our porch was concrete. At 2:21, a woman screamed once from somewhere inside the walls, not loud like a movie. Short, cut off. At 2:23, the basement door rattled. That was the one that made Kelly pack a bag, she said. "We're going to my mom's," I said. "Tonight?" She looked at me like I had missed something obvious. We left before dark and slept at her mother's house across town. I woke up at 2:17 anyway. Nothing happened there. No hits, no scrape. Just Kelly's mom snoring through the wall and a dog barking 2 houses over. I almost cried from relief. The next morning I checked the camera from our house. At 2:17 the front door shook. At 2:19 the camera glitched and the audio filled with static. At 2:21 the woman screamed. At 2:23 the basement door rattled. "We weren't even home," Kelly said. "Then we don't go back." But we had a mortgage. We had 1 car. We had a nursery half-painted in pale green. We had boxes we still hadn't unpacked. So we went back during the day. That's how the house trained us. Daylight made us practical. Night made us honest. I started asking neighbors. Not in a dramatic way. I tried to sound casual. I asked if they had ever heard weird noises from our place at night. Most of them said no. An older woman 2 doors down, Mrs. Hanley, looked at me for a long second and said, "What time?" I said. "Around 2:15. She looked past me at our front door. Then she said, "You should talk to the library." That was all, so I went. The local library had old newspapers on microfilm and a librarian who acted like she had been waiting for someone to ask. I gave her our address. She typed it into a database and got quiet. The article was from 1978. A man named Robert Voss had broken into our house at 2:17 in the morning. He had been drinking. He thought his ex-wife Carol was inside with another man. She wasn't. She had sold the house 6 months earlier. The family living there was named Whitcomb. The article said Robert forced the front door, attacked the husband in the living room, chased the wife toward the basement, and died after falling down the basement stairs during the struggle. The wife survived. The husband didn't. I sat at the library computer with my hands flat on the desk. The librarian asked if I was okay. I said, "Yeah, I wasn't." The times matched too closely. Forced entry reported at 2:17. Neighbor heard porch movement at 2:19. First scream at 2:21. Basement struggle at 2:23. I printed the article and folded it into my jacket pocket. When I showed Kelly, she didn't say anything for a while. Then she asked, "So what do we do?" I said the dumbest thing. "I don't know." That night, at 2:17, the first hit came harder than before. Bang! The picture frame beside the door fell and cracked on the floor. Bang! The chair squealed. The scrape came fast, angry. Then the voice, "Open it, Carol." Kelly stood behind me with both hands over her stomach. I said, "She's not here." The scraping stopped. The house went quiet. Then the voice moved to the mail slot. Closer than ever. "She's here." The brass flap lifted. I saw darkness through the slit. Then fingers pushed through. Not clear fingers. Not normal. Just a pale shape pressing in where fingers should be, bending wrong against the slot. I slammed the flashlight down on the mail slot. The flap snapped shut. My flashlight dented the door and bounced onto the floor. Kelly made a sound like she couldn't breathe. At 2:21, the scream came from the hallway behind us. Inside the house. We should have left right then. I know that. Instead, I turned around. The hallway light flickered. The basement door at the end of the hall was closed. The nursery door was open, and the green paint looked gray in the dim light. Something ran past the nursery doorway. Not a full person, more like the idea of a person caught at the edge of my eye. Kelly grabbed my arm. "Aaron," the basement door rattled, 2:23. I know because the microwave clock was visible from where I stood, glowing green above the stove. The basement door rattled again. Then something hit it from the other side. I had put a slide bolt on that door 2 days earlier. The bolt shook so hard the screws began to pull from the frame. I stepped forward. Kelly said, "Don't," I said. "I am just checking it." That was a lie. I knew I was going to open it. I can't explain why in a way that makes me look smart. I was tired. I was angry, and some part of me thought if I changed one piece of the routine, the whole thing might stop. The bolt jumped again. A woman sobbed from behind the door, not screamed, sobbed. She said, "Please." I had never heard that part before. Kelly whispered, "That's not for us." I slid the bolt back. The second it cleared the latch, the basement door burst inward. Cold air came up the stairs, carrying a smell like wet dirt and pennies. I saw a man on the steps. Only for a second he was halfway turned. One hand on the rail, face lowered like he was bracing for a fall. He wore a work shirt tucked into dark pants. His hair was flat against his forehead. Behind him, lower on the stairs, another shape moved fast. I raised the flashlight. The man looked right at me, his mouth opened. Then something slammed into him from behind. He fell forward through the space where I was standing. I felt nothing on my chest, no impact, no body. But the basement stairs boomed with the sound of him going down. 1 step, 2, 3. Then the final thud at the bottom. Kelly screamed my name. I backed away and tripped over the fallen picture frame. Glass cut my palm. I didn't feel it until later. From the basement, a man started laughing. Not loud, not happy. More like he had run out of air and the sound came out wrong. Then the front door hit again. Bang. At the wrong time. Kelly and I both turned. The chair was still under the knob, but it was shaking. The routine had changed. The door hit again. Bang. The chain stretched. The deadbolt turned halfway by itself, then snapped back. I grabbed Kelly's hand and pulled her toward the kitchen. We went out the back door in socks. No coats, no keys. I didn't even close it behind us. We crossed the yard and stood by the garage in the cold, watching our own house. At 2:29, every light inside went off, except the microwave clock. I could see it through the kitchen window. 2:32. 3 minutes fast. We never slept there again. We came back the next day with Kelly's brother and 2 friends from work. Daylight again. Practical again. The front door was locked. Chair still wedged under the knob. The basement door was closed. Slide bolt bent downward. My flashlight was on the living room floor with a cracked lens. The picture frame glass was broken where I had fallen. There was blood on the floor from my hand. Mine. That part was easy. There was also mud on the basement stairs. Not a lot. Just a few marks along the edge of the steps, like someone had come up with wet shoes and dragged one foot. Kelly's brother asked if we wanted him to go down there. I said no. Then I went anyway, because it was my house and I still hated feeling chased out of it. The basement was normal. Washer, dryer, boxes, furnace, a stack of paint cans from the previous owner. At the bottom of the stairs, the concrete had a dark stain. I had noticed it when we first moved in and thought it was old oil or water damage. Now I couldn't stop looking at it. We sold the house at a loss 6 months later. I disclosed unexplained nighttime disturbances because I didn't know how else to write it without sounding insane. The buyer was an investor who planned to rent it out. He barely looked at me during closing. Kelly had the baby in a different house, a quiet one. For a while, I convinced myself the old place had been stress, bad wiring, pipes and animals in the walls, an old story sitting in my head until every sound arranged itself around it. That explanation works during the day. At night, I still wake up sometimes at 2:17. Not every night, just enough. I wake up and listen. I wait for the first hit. It doesn't come. Most nights, nothing comes. But last year, I drove by the old house. I don't know why. Kelly was visiting her mom with our son, and I had time before work. I told myself I just wanted to see if the investor fixed the gutters. The house looked the same. New mailbox, different curtains, a plastic tricycle on the porch. I almost kept driving. Then I saw the front door. Someone had replaced the old dark wood door with a plain white one. New deadbolt, new knob, no mail slot. And under the knob, pushed tight against the door from the outside, was a kitchen chair. Yellow cushion, coffee stain. I parked across the street with my hands on the steering wheel until my fingers went stiff. At 2:17 in the afternoon, nothing happened. Of course nothing happened. A woman came out carrying a laundry basket. She picked up the chair, frowned at it, and looked around like she thought some neighborhood kid had moved it there. Then she carried it back inside. I wanted to warn her. I opened my car door. Then I heard it. Not from her house. From my back seat. A soft scrape, metal around a lock. I turned slowly. There was nothing back there except my work bag and my son's blue jacket. But the jacket was moving a little, like someone had just brushed past it. When I looked at the dashboard clock, it said 2:23 minutes fast. I drove home without stopping. I didn't tell Kelly for 2 days. When I finally did, she got very quiet. Then she walked to our front door and checked the deadbolt. She checked the chain. She checked the porch light. I said, "Locked up?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Good." That was months ago. I haven't driven by the old house since. I keep a chair by our current front door now. Kelly hates it. I hate it too. It's not even useful. Our new door opens the other way, so the chair can't wedge under the knob right. But every night before bed, I still put my hand on the back of it. Just once. Deadbolt. Chain. Porch light. Locked up. Good. Most nights. That's all it is. A routine. A man trying to feel better in his own house. But 2 weeks ago, I came downstairs early for work. It was still dark. The kitchen was cold, and the microwave clock glowed above the stove. 2:17, I stood there barefoot, holding my keys. The chair by the front door was turned around, not moved across the room, not knocked over, turned around, facing inward, like someone had been sitting there all night watching the hallway, waiting for the house to remember again.